He was only 23, but when he looked at me, it felt like I was the only person in the room. And I, a 52-year-old woman who hadn't been truly seen in years, didn't look away. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the first move in a game my 58-year-old husband had set in motion long before I even realized I was playing. A trap, and I was the target. If you think betrayal only happens by choice, listen closely. Sometimes the most dangerous person in your life isn't the one flirting with you. It's the one watching you quietly, patiently, waiting to see how far you'll fall. Hit like if you've ever felt invisible in your own home. And don't forget to subscribe, because these are the stories no one dares to say out loud, but we all need to hear. Let me tell you what happened. The last time I felt alive, and the price I paid for it, I've been married to Michael Harris for 29 years. On paper, he's the kind of man any woman would be proud to stand beside. 58 years old, successful, respected, well-dressed, well-spoken. He's a cardiologist, which somehow made it feel crueler when he stopped seeing my heart. We live in Seattle, a modern condo, with large windows, polished floors, and silent dinners. At least 3 nights a week, he works late. On the others, he reads medical journals and answers emails like they're life or death. In many ways, I stopped being a person and became part of the furniture, dependable, quiet, and always there. At 52, I had made peace with the version of myself that no one noticed, or at least I thought I had. Then came Jaden. He was 23, just a summer intern, fresh out of undergrad. He wasn't supposed to be anything more than a passing name in the office directory, but he was tall, carried himself like someone twice his age, and had this way of speaking that made you want to keep listening. Not because he was loud, but because he was curious. Intentional. The first time we spoke, I was pouring a weak cup of office coffee. That machine had been groaning for years, but somehow it still limped along like the rest of us. You know, he said from behind me, people over 50 shouldn't be drinking this stuff past noon, unless you're planning to run a marathon at midnight. I turned around, mildly amused, and caught his grin. It wasn't arrogant. It was playful, confident without being threatening. Are you always this bold with management? I asked. Only when they're pouring their 5th cup of the day, he replied. That was it, the start of something I didn't recognize yet. Not attraction, not temptation, just something that made me feel like I wasn't invisible. In the weeks that followed, I found myself noticing Jaden more than I should. The way he greeted the janitor by name, how he always brought a notebook to meetings, even when he wasn't expected to talk. He was observant, thoughtful, and more than anything else, he noticed me. Not in a way that crossed lines, but in a way that reminded me what it felt like to be seen. He'd compliment a necklace I hadn't worn in years. Ask what song I was humming when I thought no one was listening. He remembered things. Things Michael had long stopped paying attention to. And little by little, I started remembering myself too. Not the version that meal prepped and answered PTA emails, but the version who once painted on Saturdays, who used to laugh without checking the room first, who still kept a playlist of 90s R&B on her phone. There wasn't anything inappropriate between us. No touching, no secrets, just glances that lingered a second too long, smiles held in silence. But if you asked me when things started to shift, I'd tell you it wasn't when Jaden leaned in. It was when I leaned back. By the 3rd week of the internship, I started choosing my outfits more carefully. Nothing dramatic, Just a blouse that fit a little closer at the waist, a skirt I hadn't worn in 2 years, lipstick I used to save for anniversary dinners, the kind Michael no longer bothered to remember. I told myself it was about feeling good, about reclaiming some version of myself I'd let fade over the years. But deep down, I knew better. Jaden noticed. He didn't say anything the first time, just glanced up when I walked into the office, paused for a beat, and offered a soft, surprised smile. The kind of smile that doesn't need words. We started running into each other more often. At the elevator, in the hallway, during morning coffee runs. Sometimes I lingered by the water cooler longer than I needed to. Sometimes I think he did too. We joked. We shared playlists. We texted always, starting with something about a project or scheduling, and somehow drifting into favorite movies, childhood memories, old songs that meant something. He asked questions no one had asked me in years. Did you always want to work in business? What was your dream job at 20? What's a city you've never been to, but still think about? It felt innocent until it didn't, because at some point I started waiting for him to text back, checking my phone between meetings, picking my words more carefully in messages than I did in staff memos. Jaden had this way of remembering things. He brought me coffee just the way I liked it, even though I'd never said it out loud. He once referenced a book I mentioned in passing 2 weeks earlier. He even downloaded the soundtrack to a 90s movie I told him I loved and sent me a song from it late one night with just one line of text. This felt like you. That was the night before everything almost changed. It was a Friday. The office emptied out early for the long weekend. I stayed behind to finish a quarterly review. At least that's what I told myself. I was still at my desk when Jaden walked in, holding a pizza box. Everyone else bailed, he said. Figured you hadn't eaten either. I should have said thank you and gone home. But I didn't. We sat in the conference room, eating greasy slices over open spreadsheets, laughing about terrible pop songs and bad first jobs. The room felt smaller than usual. The lights dimmer. His voice softer. My laugh louder. I forgot to check the time. At one point, a crumb landed on my chin. I reached for a napkin, but he was faster. Hold still, he said quietly, brushing it away with his thumb. His hand was warm, his touch gentle. And for a moment, we just froze there. I didn't lean in, but I didn't pull away either. The silence wrapped around us like a secret not spoken but shared. Then just as quickly he blinked, sat back and looked away. Sorry, he mumbled, standing up. I should go. I nodded, throat tight. He left without another word, and I sat there alone, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat in an empty room that suddenly felt too quiet. Nothing had happened, but almost everything had. Monday came, but it didn't feel like any Monday before it. Jaden didn't stop by my office. He didn't smile at me in the hallway. He didn't text, not a single word, not even a meme. It was as if Friday night had been erased, as if it had never happened, but it had. And I felt it in every breath, every beat of silence between meetings, every time I glanced at my phone and found it blank. I told myself it was good. That distance was the right thing. We hadn't crossed a line, not really, but we'd stood too close to it. Maybe he realized it. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he was doing what I didn't have the courage to. Still, I missed him. And it wasn't just about attraction. It was about presence. About being noticed, remembered, cared for, even just a little. The emptiness was louder than I expected. I didn't know silence could echo like that. Then late Tuesday night, a message appeared on my phone. We need to talk. In person. No emojis, no punctuation. Just 6 words. My stomach dropped. The next morning, he was waiting by my office door before I even got in. 5 minutes, he asked. I nodded. We stepped inside and closed the door behind us. He didn't sit. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, eyes on the skyline, like it held the answers he couldn't say out loud. I owe you an explanation, he said quietly. I waited. I didn't know at first, he continued. I swear I didn't. But once I figured it out, I didn't know how to tell you. Figured what out? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to face me. Your husband, he said. Michael. He's the reason I'm here. I blinked. Would he help me get this internship? Not directly, but he pulled strings, made a call to the board, told them I'd be a good fit. I stared at him. My chest tightened. But that's not the part that matters, he added. He paused, searching my face. He's been watching me. Since the beginning. What are you talking about? I asked. Jaden ran a hand through his hair. Michael knew. About us? About whatever this is? He's been testing you, watching you. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're not serious, I said. He told me Jaden said eyes dark now. He told me that if I ever touched you, if I ever crossed the line, he'd make sure I regretted it. I backed away, bumping into the edge of my desk. Jaden didn't move. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to scare you. But you need to know he's not just watching you. He's planning something. Silence filled the room. I could hear the hum of the ceiling vent, the muffled voices outside the door, and the sound of my own pulse thudding like a warning I should have heard weeks ago. I stood there still, as stone, trying to make sense of the words I'd just heard. Michael, my husband, the man I'd once trusted with everything, my body, my heart, my youth, had been watching, manipulating, orchestrating, all those moments that felt like chance, like sparks born out of loneliness and curiosity. They weren't accidental. They were planted. Jaden's eyes were soft, but there was tension behind them, like he expected me to scream, to run, to collapse. Instead, I whispered, why Jaden swallowed. He didn't say it outright, but the way he talked, it felt like he was playing a game. Like he wanted to prove something. Prove what Jaden looked down. That you'd take the bait. The words cut deeper than I expected. So it hadn't just been about watching. It was about control. About seeing how far I'd go. From day one, Jaden continued, he warned me. Told me you were off limits. That I was being given an opportunity and a test. I didn't fully get it then. But now, it's clear. I turned toward the window, trying to steady my breath. Outside, the city looked calm, cars moving in straight lines, people going about their lives like the world wasn't caving in for someone else. All this time, I thought I'd been rediscovering a piece of myself, a version of Clara that had been lost beneath years of routine silence and invisibility. But I hadn't been reclaiming anything. I'd been set up. Why didn't you walk away? I asked, still facing the glass. I almost did, he said. But then I started caring. And I thought, maybe if I stayed close, I could protect you. I turned around. From my husband, Jaden nodded. He's not who you think he is. My voice cracked. He's my husband. And he's been playing chess while you were trying to survive checkers, Jaden said. He's 5 steps ahead of everything. This internship, our conversations, even the coffee runs, He created the whole board. I sat down slowly, the weight of the truth pulling my legs out from under me. I feel like a lab rat, I muttered. Jaden crouched in front of me. You're not, but you could become one if you keep living like this. His words hit harder than any confession. You should leave, he said. I know it's not that simple, but you have to choose yourself before he destroys whatever's left of you. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the intern. I saw the only person in that moment telling me the truth without an agenda. The room felt smaller, the air colder, and all I could wonder was, what else in my life had been engineered without my knowing? Was any of it real? He chose Applebee's. Of all places, not the downtown steakhouse he usually reserved for apologies or bored dinners. Not the quiet little Italian spot we used to like. Applebee's. As if this was casual. As if nothing had cracked beneath the surface. When I walked in, he was already there. Pressed shirt, navy blazer, reading the wine menu like he hadn't been playing puppet master with my life for weeks. Hey, he said, standing to greet me. He kissed my cheek like he always did, a habit more than affection. You look tense, he said, scanning my face. Rough day at work. I sat down across from him. Something like that. He smiled gently, then nodded toward the server. We'll start with the Malbec. The small talk was unbearable. How was traffic? Did I see the rain forecast? Had I remembered to reschedule the dentist, he poured my wine for me like always. As if he were still the man who remembered anniversaries. As if he hadn't been planting traps and installing cameras. Halfway through the entree, he reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. A small black USB drive. I stared at it. He didn't look up from his plate. I had a few cameras installed in your office last month, he said casually, as if commenting on a weather app. Just to keep you safe, of course. Company policy's a little lax these days. My fingers tightened around my fork. And Jaden, I asked. He finally met my eyes. A flicker of a smile. Calculated, cold. I told him what would happen if he crossed the line. Silence stretched across the table like barbed wire. I stood. This is insane. He didn't flinch, didn't argue, just leaned back and said, with a quiet, measured calm, you should be careful what you do next. I froze. His voice didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Because I'm not the only one watching you anymore. The night air hit me like a wave as I stepped out of Applebee's. Cool, still, sharp enough to sting. I walked without knowing where my feet were taking me. One block, then another. The heels I had worn for Michael's comfort, short practical, clicked rhythmically against the sidewalk like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't name. My hands trembled as I unlocked the car. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me had gone utterly terrifyingly quiet. Michael's words kept echoing in my mind. You should be careful what you do next. I'm not the only one watching you anymore. And then Jaden's voice, much softer, but just as haunting. You should leave. Choose yourself. Before he breaks you. Choose myself. What did that even mean now? At home, the lights were off. The hallway smelled like cinnamon from a candle. I forgot I'd left burning. The quiet felt heavier than usual. I dropped my keys, my bag, my mask of composure. There was an email notification on my phone. From Michael. Subject, let's talk. I didn't open it. I didn't want to know what came next. Not yet. Instead, I walked slowly to the mirror in our bedroom. The woman staring back at me looked older, but not just in years. Her eyes were dimmer. Her jaw was clenched. And in that reflection, I couldn't find myself. Not the wife, not the manager, not the woman Jaden had seen. Just a question. Sometimes what we're missing isn't love. It's being seen. Not for our titles, not for our routines, but for the quiet flickering parts of us that still hope someone notices. But not every gaze means affection, and not every silence is neglect. I looked for warmth in the eyes of a stranger and missed the trap behind the smile of the one who once called me home. The scariest part wasn't betrayal. It was the feeling of being studied, watched, measured, like I was part of a test I never agreed to take. And in a world where control can look like care and surveillance can sound like protection, you start to question what's real and what's just another move in someone else's game. So, if you're listening to this, really listening, ask yourself, are you living your life? Or just surviving it? Are you safe? Or are you simply being kept? In the end, the question isn't who's watching you. It's who are you when no one's watching? Because the choice between a familiar, polished prison and the wild, risky road to freedom will always be yours. Choose wisely. Choose yourself. Have you ever felt unseen in your own home? Tell me in the comments, your voice might help someone find theirs. Like this video if it made you feel something, even if it was just finally being understood. Subscribe for more stories that go where silence lives, because some truths deserve to be heard.